Hello and welcome to the Uxbridge Historical Centre. Today we will be discussing the history of our buildings. Before we begin, we like to start our tours with an acknowledgement of the land that we are on today. The township of Uxbridge is situated on the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat, Haudenosaunee, Mississauga, and Anishinaabe people. We acknowledge that these lands are covered under the Williams Treaties and are home to the many Indigenous communities. We honor, recognize, and respect this nation and Indigenous peoples as the traditional stewards of the lands and the waters on which we now live, work, and play. The founding of Uxbridge lasted almost 100 years and involved developments in both industry and community. The earliest mention of the township dates to 1798 with a trade deal between the government of Upper Canada and the Royalists. The beginnings of a settlement in Uxbridge happened with the arrival of Quaker refugees in 1801 to 1806. By the 1840s, the town had grown exponentially as Joseph Gould built several grist mills and woolen mills. Uxbridge was given police village status in 1863 as there were enough people in the town to require its own police force. And in 1871, both the Toronto and Nipissing Railway arrived. The town also needed better fire protection, so a proper fire brigade was formed in the 1880s. Uxbridge was officially incorporated as a village in 1872 and then declared a town in 1885. Before the building was destroyed by a tornado on May 21st, 2022, there was a Victoria Corners Lodge Hall, or the Orangeman's Lodge Hall, that was on the site. The building was built in 1856 in Victoria Corners, which is about 10 minutes from here, and relocated to museum grounds in 1976. It was originally used as a meeting hall by the Orangemen, who were members of the Orange Order. The lodge was also used as a community meeting place and has retained much of its original style and structure. In 1933, the lodge was recognized as one of the oldest Orange lodges in Ontario. Now, I'm sure you're wondering what exactly the Orange Order is. The order was officially formed in 1796 in Ireland, but its roots go back much further than that. Orangism's roots can be traced back to the Great Revolution of 1688. This revolution marked the victory of the Dutch Protestant prince William III over the Catholic King James II. The name is because Prince William III was often called the Prince of Orange. The order was brought to North America by British immigrants who supported the Protestant victory of Prince William. Orange lodges were built throughout many towns, and by 1900, approximately 60,000 Orangemen lived in Canada. By the 1920s, the order was more popular in Canada than its founding country of Ireland. Some of these members may even surprise you, such as John A. Macdonald and John Diefenbaker, both Canadian Prime Ministers. In addition to regular meetings, one of the biggest events that would have been held at the Lodge Hall was an annual celebration of Prince William's victory on June 12th. The Orangemen would parade through town, starting at the lodge to Planks Hotel, where speeches and a dinner would be held. The parade often involved plenty of music and heckling at known Catholics in town. We are now heading over to our schoolhouse, which is the only historic building that has not been relocated on the museum grounds. This is where it stood when it was first built. And this is actually the third version of the schoolhouse to be in this space. The original schoolhouse was built over 200 years ago in 1817. It was built by Ezekiel James, who was one of the Quakers that had settled in Canada after fleeing the United States due to religious persecution. The first schoolhouse was built with logs and stood until the 1850s when it was replaced in order to add a proper foundation, a project that was funded by the town. The second schoolhouse was in use until 1924 when it burned down. It was then replaced with a current brick schoolhouse that was used until 1969. The buildings remained vacated for a few years until the Uxbridge Historical Society opened the museum on site in 1972. Our next building is the Fifth Line United Church. The church was built in 1870 in Coppins Corners and moved to the museum grounds in 1979. It was initially built on land purchased from John and Anne Rusnell and was referred to as the Rusnells Church. In May of 1878, the name was changed to the Fifth Line Church as it was on Uxbridge's Fifth Line, or Fifth Concession Road, known as Brock Road today. The church was originally Methodist Episcopalian until 1925, when there was a union of Methodist and Presbyterian churches to form United Churches, and the name was changed again to reflect this. During this union, this church became part of the Goodwood Methodist Circuit. Services were held in the Fifth Line Church in the morning, at Siloam in the afternoon, and at Goodwood in the evening. Around this time was when the church also had a full orchestra as opposed to just a standard choir. We will now be passing the implement shed. This long shed is our implement shed, and it was built in 1975. It is home to a lot of our larger agricultural artifacts and farming equipment. It is not a historical building. The lightning rod on the roof is typical of such rods that were found on many barns and other buildings. The rod was connected by a metal cable that was connected to another rod which had been driven into the ground. This was to conduct electricity from lightning strikes to the ground to prevent damage to the building. The balls on the rod were usually made of glass, but this one is made of metal. This red building is the Hilson Shed. Portions of this red shed date back to the 1800s and was originally located at Colborne and Victoria Street and was moved to the museum in 1973. James Hilson, a cattle drover, used the shed to house horses, livestock, and cattle. Such sheds, or carriage sheds, also known as coach houses, were often built in the backyards of townhomes. They provided stable room for a driving horse, perhaps for a cow and chickens. They usually had space upstairs for a cutter, buggy, hay, and straw. The wide upper door on this shed provided access from the outside to the upper level. The round windows add a decorative element to the shed. These, along with the finial, the pointed decorations at the roof peaks, give it a Victorian appearance. We mainly just use this to store more of our agricultural and farm equipment. Our next stop is the Gold Carmody House. This was originally a farmhouse on a property located on Brock Street West, close to where the Uxbridge Arena is today. The house was built in 1860 by Joseph Gould, who was a prominent figure in Uxbridge's history and development. During the time that Joseph Gould owned it, the house was primarily used for farmhands who worked the land. Joseph Gould was born in Uxbridge in 1808 and worked as a carpenter, later developing an interest in politics that led to him serving as the first local MPP of Uxbridge. Gould also considered going to Ohio to gain more experience as a carpenter's apprentice, but was convinced to stay by his neighbor and later father-in-law Ezekiel James, as carpenters were also needed in Uxbridge. About 1895, Charles Gould, son of Joseph Gould, acquired this farm and the next one to the north. We know from the Uxbridge newspaper that he built a new barn at that time near the center line of the two farms. Carmody Lane is located there now. The story is that he moved the house from the first farm to the second location. The house and property were owned by the Gould family until 1914, when it was bought by the Carmody family, who owned the house until 1951. Only one other family lived there before it was moved to the museum grounds in 1988. The Carmody House is an Ontario Gothic in style with a 1.5-story addition on the rear. There is evidence that the back section of the house may have been moved from another location, as the upper floors are not at exactly the same level. Earlier, a woodshed was attached to the rear of the house. Our next stop on the tour is the Nesbitt Shed. The Nesbitt shed was originally located on the Nesbitt farm on Concession Road 6 and was moved to the museum grounds in 1981. The shed has an upper front door which indicates that buggies and cutters may have been stored upstairs. The stairs were added after the shed had been moved to the museum, and it's interestingly the only building in the museum that does not have hydro. The Nesbitt farm was a filming location for the television series Road to Avonlea, which was based on stories Lucy Maud Montgomery wrote while living in Leesdale. The print shop was built on the UHC property from 1994 to 1995 to house our printing equipment. The former owners of the Uxbridge Printing Company, Harry Stemp and Bill Kaisers, donated many pieces of printing equipment to the museum after the printing company was sold in the early 1990s. In the main room, we have printing technology from a wide range of time periods, as the Uxbridge Printing Company was formed in 1899 and ran until the 1990s. The print shop is a new structure and was designed to look like one of the old Boomstown front buildings that were common in many towns. The front of the building was made higher to give it a more imposing look. It was constructed between 1994 and 1995. The frame was done by carpenters who were working on the housing development on Campbell Drive in Uxbridge. When Bill Kaisers and Harry Stemp started the Uxbridge Printing Company, they began buying local newspapers. By 1982, the Uxbridge Printing Company had acquired 8 papers, including the Uxbridge Times-Journal. Our next building on our tour is the Scott Town Hall. The Scott Township Hall was originally located west of Concession 6 Road and was used by the Scott Township Council from its establishment in 1860 until 1967. While in use, the hall was well used by members of the Uxbridge community, serving as a community hall, church, and site for school activities. Scott Township was named after Thomas Scott, an Attorney General and Chief Justice of Upper Canada. The township was then amalgamated with the Township of Uxbridge in 1974 with the creation of the Regional Municipality of Durham. After the building's closure, it was bought by Dorothy and Ed Brown and was moved to their farm, where it served as the County Heritage Museum for 30 years. In 1993, the owners donated the building to the UHC and it was relocated to the museum grounds. The chimney was rebuilt in April of 1994 using some of the old brick from the chimney at the old Zephyr Presbyterian Church. The foundation was faced with stone from a blacksmith shop that sat at the northwest corner in Zephyr. The stonework was done by Bill Clearly of Uxbridge. Our final stop on the tour is the Kid Stokes house. This is the Kid Stokes house. Although it now serves as the main office for the UHC, it has been the home of multiple influential figures in Uxbridge's history. It was built in 1908 by George Stokes, who was a councillor, deputy reeve, and treasurer of the Agricultural Society. George and his wife Mary lived in the house until 1916. It was later owned by Nellie Kidd, who was Uxbridge's first female mayor, elected in 1963. Originally, the house was located where the parking lot for the Uxbridge Secondary School is today. It was moved to the Historical Centre in 2002 for preservation after being purchased by the Township of Uxbridge. Conclusion. I hope you enjoyed your time here today. I welcome you to take a look around the highlight gallery, peek into the gift shop, peruse our research room, if the museum. Thank you for visiting us today. We hope to see you again soon.